This is extremely good news for Islander fans, as Patrick Waugh has spoken about his plans for this lineup, and it is really exciting, especially when it comes to where Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat are going to be playing and who their line mates are going to be. There is a lot to look forward to, especially after recent moves, and we're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. But really quickly, before we get into that, we noticed that 66% of you who watch these videos still have not subscribed to the channel, so if you're an Islander fan, you want more Islanders content just like this, what are you waiting for? Be sure to hit subscribe, it's free. The offseason, while it might not be over, we've really hit a big part where we have a really good idea of what this Islanders team is going to look like, at least at the start of the training camp. And while I do think there still will be changes, just because there are really so many forwards, we have a pretty good idea of who's going to be on this team. And now Patrick Waugh has really given us a good idea on who's going to be playing together, and I think this has a lot of fans excited because in what Patrick Waugh is planning to do, it gives the Islanders a lot of potential to really spread out the offense. This is something they desperately needed to do. I think a week ago when we were talking about the Islanders, there was this acceptance that Jean-Gabriel Pageau was likely going to be the second line center. And while I love Pageau, I think he does so much right on the ice. I do think the Islanders are going to trade him at some point this season. I don't think it is going to be the start of the season. When they do, I think they're going to get a lot in return. But as a second line center, he just does not work, in my opinion. Now it seems like the second line center is going to be either Bo Horvat or Matt Barzal, as they are both going to be playing center next season, which is really exciting. Patrick Waugh spoke to the media after this mini camp for the Islanders rookies, and there was a lot to see in that camp. We're going to discuss that at some point, because just going to the blue and white scrimmage, there was so much I saw that I was excited about, but really focusing on what Patrick Waugh had to say about the current roster right now, because while the future is super exciting to talk about, the Islanders still have a season to play coming up next season, and this is going to be really important when it comes to who is playing with who. We know the Islanders really struggle to score, so there's going to have to be changes in the lineup. And now that we've really seen what free agency has brought to the Islanders, we have a better idea of what these changes could be. And it's going to be, I think, a lot more exciting than a lot of Islander fans thought. Now, when Patrick Waugh spoke to the media, one of the big things he said, which definitely got my attention, and we're not going to focus on it too much in this video, just because it's probably a bit more negative in terms of everything that's going on with the Islanders. With all the positives, I think it's better to focus on that. But also, I don't think this is anything to panic about yet. But Patrick Waugh says he has not yet talked to Duclair, and he plans on meeting him in person. And I do think Patrick Waugh is going to be able to handle this. Remember, while the comments Patrick Waugh made about Duclair were not really good, remember, he called him god-awful after a rough game on the ice. I will say, Patrick Waugh is really a big part of what brought Duclair to the Islanders, and I have no doubt they can figure this out. There's going to be a lot of questions on where Duclair is going to play in the lineup this season, especially with the new additions. We're going to get to that in just a second, but I think a lot of the focus here is on Barzal will be starting at center. This is not Patrick Waugh saying he's considering putting Barzal at center. This is something that Patrick Waugh has talked about a lot in the past, where he feels like when Matt Barzal is not playing center, you're not getting the full benefit of his dynamic skating and his playmaking ability. He thinks that Matt Barzal is a more effective player when he's a center. And personally, I completely agree. While I do think playing with Bo Horvat was a lot of fun, and while Brock Nelson was also on the team, they had so many centers, it made sense for Matt Barzal to play wing as opposed to Brock Nelson or Bo Horvat, just because his skill set fits better as a wing in addition to a center. But now that they need that second line center, I think it makes total sense to bring Barzal back to center. And I'm really excited to see what Barzal can do playing this position once again. We're going to talk about the stats in just 1 second. I think this is something that can work a lot. In addition, he has also said that he expects Drouin to start with Bo Horvat. And this makes this signing make a lot of sense. I think it's really clear that Matthew Darche also views Matt Barzal as a center. I just don't think you're getting full value out of Barzal when he's not playing center. As a result, I think he brings in Drouin to be that playmaker to play with Bo Horvat, and now the Islanders can perhaps have the best of both worlds and potentially have two lines that are effective. And if that is the case, then I think the Islanders can have a really successful season this year. When it comes to the Islanders in the past, it seems like they were very contingent on Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat playing together, and when that was not clicking, the rest of the offense completely fell apart. So if the Islanders can find a new way to score, where Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat are separate. Of course, they can still play together on the power play, and I think that alone is going to improve this power play. But having them play separate 5-on-5, I think, is going to be really crucial for the Islanders' success next season, really as a franchise long term. And then finally, I do want to note before we get into actually talking about why I think Barzal is going to work really well playing center once again, and who I think he's going to be playing with. Patrick Waugh was also talking about what coaches will be taking care of what this season, and Bennett will be running the power play, something I think is going to work very well, especially considering he has experience with Druin. Bugner will be running the penalty kill, and Desiree will be helping with the 5-on-5 and face-offs. And I think this is one thing we're really going to have to hone in on here. I think he did an incredible job when it came to the face-offs last season. While Brock Nelson and Horvat and Pajot are all really good at face-offs to begin with, the Islanders really hit another level last season when it came to face-offs. It was Pajot's best season ever in the face-off dot. The same for Brock Nelson. And I'm really curious to see if he can also improve Matt Barzal's face-off taking, because that's been a big flaw in his game when it comes to him as a center. Looking at Barzal's stats, and this is perhaps the more uglier view of the stat, but I think it's important to really look at all the numbers here. And I think when it comes to Barzal as a center, the biggest criticism, in my opinion, has always been the face-offs. He's defensively a solid center, perhaps not the best center in the NHL defensively, but he does such a good job at transitioning the puck and also generating takeaways, and as a result, he is a pretty solid defensive center. Even in his rookie year, he was really effective from that position. The face-offs has always been a really big problem for Barzal. 42% his rookie year. We expected that to get better as time went on. It really never did. In recent years now, Barzal has not been focusing on face-off, so it makes sense that they haven't improved drastically. The past 3 years, he really wasn't playing center. But before that, he really struggled around 42%, and I'm not expecting the coaching staff to make Barzal into a 55% dominant face-off taker. But if we can get that number up to 47, 48, where it's not going to be as detrimental to the Islanders, I think that's going to be a big win. Obviously, with Barzal as a center, you don't have to have him take the face-offs. We have had situations in the past where Anders Lee has taken the majority of the face-offs for Matt Barzal, and while that has worked to an extent, I do think it works better if Matt Barzal is actually lining up at the face-off dot. So I definitely think that's going to be something he has to work on, and if he does, I think Matt Barzal at face-off can work deceptively well. It's kind of weird to say that players can have different offensive production playing in different positions, especially considering in the offensive zone, it really becomes kind of like a mesh soup, at least amongst the forwards. But one thing you got to keep in mind with Barzal is he is so effective in transition game. I think you lose a little bit of that when he plays wing. And while I think it was kind of neutralized by the fact that he just had great chemistry with Horvat, that it just made sense for them to play together, if you look at Barzal's best year in the NHL, it was his rookie year when he was playing center. And I think that is definitely something for the Islanders to note. Yes, last 2 seasons ago, when he was 26, he had another really good season, finally putting up 80 points again. That was playing with Bo Horvat, and I think while that pair worked a lot, I think it's so much better for the Islanders to separate these players and hopefully find some new wingers for Barzal to play with and Horvat to play with that are going to work really well. And I really think Darch has done a really good job setting up the Islanders with new wingers. Quickly, I also want to talk about Bo Horvat. Again, this is a player who played better with Barzal. I think his best year in the NHL was last season, like the year before the most recent season, where he put up 33 goals, 35 assists, for 68 points playing with Barzal. But I do want to note, then last year, Barzal missed the majority of the year, so Horvat was kind of playing with some new wingers here, not really Barzal. Barzal only really played 30 games for the Islanders this season, and Horvat put up 57 points without him. And I think this, in my opinion, really encourages me that Bo Horvat can play without Barzal. And as a result, I think it makes sense to split these guys up, because if you can have Barzal potentially having 75 points on one line, and then Bo Horvat putting up 60 points on another, that's going to be a huge win for the Islanders. And looking at the lineup, they now have the wingers to do this. Before, this was not the case. When Horvat and Barzal were playing separately, you just did not have the talent to surround them both with a successful line. Now, just looking at the Islanders lineup, Yeah, this works. Druin with Horvat, I think, is going to be a really interesting pair. I think Druin's skills really complement well what Horvat does. And while I'm not saying Horvat is anything like McKinnon, I think this is going to have a similar dynamic where Druin is going to be in his best form, perhaps being able to put up 0.75 points per game, something like that. I think that's what I'm really expecting with a player like Horvat. I just think their game styles mesh really well. And then when you add a player like maybe Palmieri, I think this would actually be a perfect first line for the Islanders. And then on the second line, I really think that Holmstrom has the speed to play with Barzal. And the Islanders have tried this in the past and it hasn't worked. But I think that was because Holmstrom was not ready. And I think last year while Barzal was injured, Holmstrom really took that step forward. I think he's ready to play with Barzal. Now, it's going to be left to see whether or not it makes sense for Lee to play with Barzal. That's a pair that really has not worked too well, in my opinion. Yes, Lee has help with faceoffs, but I just think he's a bit too slow to play Barzal's game. And Barzal is more looking for shooters who are getting open rather than Lee in front of the net. I just think Lee perhaps plays better on a third line type position. And what I think is really interesting now, though, is the Islanders have now added Maxim Shabanov, and I think he's a really compelling option to play with Barzal. He is considered more of a skill guy than a shooting guy, but if you look at him, he definitely has a shot that is worthy of playing in the top six in the NHL, and I think he could be a really good complement with Barzal, and then put Holmstrom on that other wing. He's very versatile, so that will not be an issue at all, and this could be a really interesting combination for the Islanders, and still leaves good talent in the bottom six, which is something I do want to note. Looking at this current projected lineup for the Islanders, I definitely think Siplikov is way too low. He's going to need more minutes. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Anthony Duclair, especially considering everything else the Islanders have added. At this point, he's currently slated at the third line, but I can really see him being one of the odd men out, especially after that rough season he had last year. While this apology with Patrick Waugh is going to be really great, I think Duclair is really going to have to earn his minutes again, because while I know he was playing hurt last year, I think he lost a lot of trust with Patrick Waugh. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. In the comments, put what you think the Islanders' starting lineup for the beginning of the year is going to be in terms of the forwards. I'm really curious to see who you think should be playing together. At some point this summer, I'm definitely going to put together my own. I have a couple different ideas here. I definitely think Horvat and Druin is going to work really well. And the more I think about it, I'm really liking Barzal and Holmstrom together. I know in the past Holmstrom has played with Pajot, but I think it's time he gets a promotion to play with Barzal. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.